G'day, I'm Dr. Alison Fuller, and in the words of the singer-songwriter Paul Simon, you can call me Al. This video is titled Telehealth Music Therapy Practice Approaches from Australia with a focus on emerging technologies, presented within the Telehealth Spotlight session at the World Congress of Music Therapy 2023 in Vancouver. I'm presenting today from the unceded lands of the Gadigal people, located within the place we now call Sydney, Australia. It's such a privilege to be invited to make this video today and invited to speak at the Congress. And I acknowledge that privilege and all the moments, opportunities, and support that has led to me being here. Within this presentation, I'm planning on outlining the connected music therapy teleintervention approach, and I'll also highlight the Australian Journal of Music Therapy Special Edition, published 2021, titled This is Australia, Online Music Therapy Down Under. Then I'm going to tell you a little about two research projects taking place in Australia investigating ultra-low latency technologies for utilisation within music therapy telepractice, and how we're teaching on telepractice within the Master of Creative Music Therapy program. To start though, I'd like to share a little with you about my workplace, Western Sydney University. Situated in one of the most diverse communities in the world, our 8 campuses are located on the lands of the Darug, Darawal, Eora and Wiradjuri nations. The teaching and learning currently delivered across our campuses is a continuance of the teaching and learning that has occurred on those lands for tens of thousands of years. Our students sit at the heart of everything we do. We are unashamedly student-focused. Additionally, our research has global impact. Western is one of the younger, less established universities in Australia, coming up to 35 years old next year, which is why I want to take a moment to tell you about our recent award. For 2 years in a row, Western Sydney University has been named number 1 in the world in the Times Higher Education University Impact Rankings, from 1,700 universities who entered the rankings process. Universities are assessed on their commitment to the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals based on teaching, research, outreach, and stewardship. To say these United Nations goals are important is an understatement. Focused around areas such as gender equity, partnerships, reduced inequities, responsible consumption and production. I'm proud to be employed at Western within the Master of Creative Music Therapy, and we will be celebrating 25 years of music therapy training at Western next year. Some photos to share. This is graduation from April this year, our very happy graduates. And in the photo below, we have my colleagues on that day, the esteemed Dr. Alison Short, and then myself, and our very wonderful placement coordinator, Lauren Bortolazzo. And then another recent photo. This is some of our music therapy key teaching team having lunch on campus just a few weeks ago in winter. We have such harsh winters in Sydney. So what a big lead up it's been to this presentation. For me, it's been a particularly crazy year. You may have noticed my name in media headlines, on billboards, on TV, on the internet. Some of the headlines have been okay, though a little concerning. I like the Shakespeare reference. Al or not Al? That is the question. Other headlines have really caused me to reflect. Is Al an existential threat? I don't think so. Al could take over 20 million jobs by 2030. Well, trust me, I don't want 20 million jobs. I have one job and that's enough. Some headlines have been hurtful and upsetting. Is Al really that intelligent? And this one, is Al really a threat to humanity? Some have been trying to weigh me up. Pros and cons of Al, advantages and disadvantages. Then there is the music or the creativity aspect with mixed headlines. Al with the music heart, that's more like it. And then the headlines have hit very close to my work, my career as an academic. Al is here. If we fight it, well, I would have preferred her, we'll lose, and so will our students. Gosh. 4 ways that OWL can help students. Well, that's more like it. How can OWL be used by university students? Okay, though not sure I want to be used. So where does this leave me, OWL, in 2023? This headline asks the same question. OWL, where are we now? I'm as confused and conflicted as the rest of us. About me, about OWL. I'm sorry, I'm not able to answer this question at this time. So there you have it. It's been a big year. Now let's talk about telehealth, telepractice, and the connected music therapy teleintervention approach. As a nod to all who have come before, we've given it an acronym, COMTA. As mentioned earlier, I live and work in Australia where we have vast distances between towns and cities. There is not suitable access for many people who would benefit from music therapy. Now rewind, 2017. I received a call from one of our community partners asking if we would be interested in running a weekly group program for parent-child dyads. The community partner had been using teleintervention for one-to-one speech therapy, and now they wanted to try group music therapy via teleintervention with these same families. You'll see here on this map, the green flag is where the music therapist was located in Sydney, and the red flags were where the 3 families were located, with hundreds of kilometres between each family. To do a round trip to visit each of these families is almost 1,000 kilometres and would take over 12 hours to complete just the journey. As a result of this project, we developed COMTA, the Connected Music Therapy Teleintervention Approach. The article was published in 2019. We didn't know there was a pandemic on the way and that the way we all do music therapy was about to change. Let me tell you a little bit more about COMTA. The approach brings together delivery models, a session plan framework, technology practice features, and additional considerations. As far as delivery models go, in that first project, we carried out some weekly programs where the participants were all in their homes with a basic kit of items that they had gathered to use in the sessions, and the music therapists were at the community organisation. We did some workshops where the families were all together in a remote location with instruments borrowed from the local school. The music therapists were again at the community organisation. We also did some mixed model programs where the music therapist would fly to the location of the group for the first and the last sessions of a block, leaving a music therapy kit with the group, while they facilitated via telepractice for sessions 2 through to 7. These photos are of a moment in time where the speech pathologist and I were facilitating a session with 3 families located as per the map from the previous slide. One child in each of the families was learning to hear after having been fitted with a hearing aid or a cochlear implant. The song we were doing in that moment was, "Hey, hey, what's that sound?" So you can read more about COMTA within the article. During the pandemic lockdowns, we used aspects or elements of COMTA with families with a range of different complex needs. COMTA was adapted, modified, simplified, and or extended as needed, depending on the needs of the participants, using the weekly delivery model. This screenshot shows music therapist Lauren Bortolazzo in the yellow box and community organisation facilitator Julie at the top with 3 families. Within this photo, all children are head down, demonstrating their homemade drums. This shows music therapist Sydney-Rella Fahima with 6 families enjoying a moment of dancing. These programs took place via Zoom when Sydney was in level 4 lockdowns. Extremely restrictive stay-at-home orders were in place. Even more restrictive were the orders for Western Sydney, given the rapidly increasing case numbers. This photo is also from the Western Sydney area when COMTA was adapted for use within a medical setting for children in palliative care. This is the music therapist Roxanne McLeod with the guitar and a child life therapist. There were many and compounding technology equity excess issues, and For many children, it was a difficult adjustment to go from face-to-face music therapy to online music therapy. Gathering instruments and props for some was difficult or impossible in lockdown, and families really had to make do with what they could find at home. There were many and compounding technology equity access issues, and for many children, it was difficult adjustment to go from face-to-face music therapy to online music therapy. Gathering instruments and props for home use was difficult or even impossible in lockdown. Families really had to make do with what they could find at home. There were multiple layers of stress being experienced by families. Gathering written feedback after all the programs we did during lockdown was a challenge. Families were stretched, exhausted, overloaded. From informal verbal communications, texts, and email exchanges between the parents and facilitators, from all accounts, these sessions were seen as beneficial and were valued by families. A team of us presented on this at the AMTR conference in 2021, where we described how Compta was adapted for use with children in palliative care, within a clinic and outreach program, with adults and in aged care. And of course, Western Sydney was not the only area in lockdown. We had strict border closures and extended stay-at-home orders across the country, with Melbourne in late 2021 holding the unenviable record for world's longest lockdown. After the shock of it all, Australian music therapists jumped to action, creatively working out ways to facilitate music therapy sessions online. So let's keep going now with the Australian Journal of Music Therapy Special Edition. Published in December 2021, this special edition highlighted the responsive and creative ways Australian registered music therapists pivoted to developing online telehealth approaches. Titled This is Australia Online Music Therapy Down Under, the title of this edition is inspired by songs from 1980s Australian rock bands Gangajang. This is Australia, this is Australia, and Men at Work. I come from a land down under, can't you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover. The title was chosen specifically to encourage an Australian focus for the edition while embracing the multicultural, neurodiverse, interwoven fabric of our communities at this time. I was honoured to be the invited guest editor for this edition. The edition starts off with research conducted by Baker and Tamplin, in which RMTs and participants were surveyed. The barriers, challenges and advantages of telehealth music therapy are discussed. From this research, we move into articles based directly on practice, whereby programs, approaches and case materials within the telehealth context are described. McLeod and Starr share 3 case examples from a paediatric palliative care setting. Berry and colleagues detail how a national Sing and Grow program adapted and innovated. Thompson and Khalil Sabib wrote about providing group music therapy programs to adults accessing the Australian National Disability Scheme. Following, we have 2 articles situated within medical settings, employing both in-person and telehealth delivery models during the pandemic. Forrest and colleagues describe the impact of the pandemic in providing music therapy within 2 cancer hospitals. Then O'Brien and colleagues share how the music therapy team at one of Australia's key COVID hospitals evolved and expanded. Additionally, the team focused on supporting the well-being of the healthcare workers within the hospital and developed the Scrub Choir. This leads fittingly into the article by Ib Winfield and Grokey, which focuses on a virtual group music therapy and imagery program for the healthcare staff of a private hospital. Finally, a conceptual article by McClellan introduces the accessible music model with an emphasis on increasing technological competency for online music therapy. I'm really proud of this edition and that we managed to publish late 2021. Along with all the amazing music therapy research, writing and publications that came from around the world at that time and over the last few years. Music therapists are such a creative bunch, no surprise there, and were so quick to write up and publish. So from here, I'd like to bring the timeline forward to some projects happening now in Australia. projects investigating ultra-low latency technologies for utilisation within music therapy telepractice, and how we're teaching on telepractice within the Master of Creative Music Therapy program at Western. So what is latency? Well, I'd like you to meet our music therapist here with the guitar and our music therapy participant here with the maracas. In a music therapy context, latency can be described simplistically as the time, measured in milliseconds, that music takes to travel from the music therapist to the music therapy participant, and from the participant, so their musical response, back to the music therapist and vice versa. It is the time it takes, the back and forth between the music therapist and music therapy participant. So speech works okay online. We don't really notice the latency time as we talk back and forth with another person or with a group of people, although the latency is there and it can cause fatigue. Musicking together is a different thing. We notice it. Other fields that notice it and who are seeking low latency or ultra low latency are in gaming and in online trading and stocks and shares. Latency exists in all music therapy situations, even when the music therapist and participant are together in a single location. When you are sitting in a room with your music therapy participants and your chairs are 3 meters or 10 feet apart, there will be about 10 milliseconds of latency. So when music making online, high latency is problematic. High latency means that many of our more traditional or foundational ways of musicking are a real challenge or near impossible to include in our online music therapy sessions. Low latency might be okay for some experiences, mostly with two-way musicking without a steady rhythmic element. Ultra low latency, ideally less than 20 to 30 milliseconds, allows for some perceived satisfactory music making experiences. In order to experience ultra low latency, the music therapist and their participants need the most optimal internet connections and optimized computer and audio gear. So yes, music therapists have been creating workarounds and wonderful new ways of engaging online. I'm constantly amazed. However, the back and forth of musicking together, improvising together, recreating songs together, singing together, this is very challenging, if not impossible. I hear music therapists saying, I try to work out what the delay is like within any given session, and I try to adjust my tempo so that the experience for the participant on the other side is okay, so that the music sounds okay to them, even though to me it sounds out of time. Unfortunately, there's no evidence to suggest that this is the case. We as music therapists cannot know what the audio experience is like for the person on the other end of the connection. And the literature tells us that latency not only changes from day to day and session to session, but it may actually change from second to second. So there's really no way for us as music therapists to adjust the timing of our music so that it works for our participants on the other end. Fortunately, new technologies are emerging, including platform-only options, such as the recent Zoom updates. You might have seen the live performance audio beta preference setting on Zoom, which Zoom claims reduces audio lag during live performances. There are also emerging technologies combining hardware and software, and this brings us to the projects taking place currently in Australia. Our colleagues at University of Melbourne, a team led by Jeanette Tamplin, are exploring online singing, utilising a platform called Jack Trip and hardware components, including an audio interface and a separate Raspberry Pi, as you can see depicted here in this diagram. They're noting some really positive results with regards to low latency. More to come on that project from Jeanette and her team in the future. At Western Sydney University, we are using Elk Live Bridge, exploring its use across a range of online music therapy experiences, such as singing, playing tuned and untuned percussion instruments, moving, body percussion, and instrumental improvisation. The Elk Live Bridge is a combined platform and hardware option, as you can see here. The yellow box or bridge is connected to your modem and your computer. Plug in a microphone or two, headphones and other instruments if you wish, and off you go. We are also noticing some encouraging results. Further to come on this in an upcoming publication. So within this limited time, I thought a video would be useful. This is Rachel Mackay, registered music therapist, and I playing together. The song is Wanju, meaning welcome, by Gina Williams, and it's in Noongar language. It was very much a let's just have a go situation, so not at all rehearsed. You'll hopefully be able to hear Rachel playing the melody, she's sight reading, having not played this song before, along to my chords. The mix is not the best, but you should get the idea, and I hope you will note the fun that we're having by being able to play together in what feels like real time. You will notice that the audio is ultra low latency, but the video is not. Video latency is a whole other area of innovation and not quite where we need it to be as yet. Nice.
So cool.
That's so fun. This brings us to teaching on telepractice at Western. So prior to the pandemic, we had just published on Compta, so we set up our students in small groups within the ensemble rooms on campus to try online music therapy using Zoom in 2019. You can imagine how that went, but some good learnings, and that particular cohort headed out into the world in January 2020 for their first year as registered music therapists. Within a couple of months, we were all in lockdown and they were drawing on their limited experiences, but experiences nonetheless, to engage with their music therapy participants online. During the lockdowns, we ramped up our teaching on telepractice, teaching online about online music making. Within Australia, it seems like telepractice is here to stay, with many facilities and centres offering in-person and online services. So we continue to teach on telepractice within the Music Therapy at Western program, now using the Elk Live Bridge and other emerging and updated technologies, such as Zoom's new features. Photos are probably the best way to paint the picture. In this photo, we have 3 of our second year students in a room on campus at Western. On their screen, which is difficult to see, there's a group of first year students also on campus, but in another room down the other end of the building. So this was a 2-way session. At this time, they were doing a clapping test or experience where one of the second year students clapped a rhythm and the group of first year students were imitating that rhythm. This photo is of our first year students in a room on campus involved in a 3-way session with some second year students who are facilitating and also an additional group of first year students. They are participating in a song requiring singing and untuned percussion. This is another session with more of our first year students in a 2-way session with second year students on the screen facilitating a movement activity. And in this last photo, we have 2 of our first year students in a 2-way session with the second year students on screen doing some vocal improvisation. So there you have it, information on Compta and the special edition of the Australian Journal of Music Therapy. Some highlights on latency projects taking place in Australia and some photos on our teaching at Western. Thank you so much to all of these wonderful people and thank you for watching this presentation. Feel free to email me for a reference list or further information at this address on screen.